When I was 7 years old, I won first place in the regional science fair for designing a water filtration system using household materials. I was so excited to show my parents the gold medal and certificate. I rushed home, burst through the door, and found them in the living room celebrating with champagne. For a brief, shining moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, they were celebrating my achievement. They weren't. My sister Diana, who was 13 at the time, had just been accepted into a prestigious private middle school. The champagne, the flowers, the congratulations calls to relatives, all of it was for her. When I tried to show them my medal, my mother glanced at it briefly and said, "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Now go wash up for dinner. We're having Diana's favorite tonight." That moment, as small as it might seem, became a pattern that would define the next 23 years of my life. I'm Melissa, and I'm 30 years old now. Looking back, I can see how every achievement, every milestone, every moment that should have been mine was somehow overshadowed by Diana's presence in our family. Diana wasn't just the older sister. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the daughter my parents had always dreamed of. She was beautiful, charismatic, academically gifted, and socially adept. I was the backup plan, the insurance policy, the one who existed in the shadows of her brilliance. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, in our comfortable suburban neighborhood, I watched my parents pour everything into Diana. Private tutors, expensive summer camps in Europe, a brand new Mercedes when she turned 16, and a fully funded college education at Stanford with no student loans. Meanwhile, I got the family's old Honda Civic with 150,000 miles on it, worked 3 part-time jobs throughout college, and graduated from Oregon State with $65,000 in student debt. But here's the thing about being the forgotten child. You become resourceful. You learn to be self-sufficient. By the time I was 16, I was working weekends at a local bookstore. At 18, I started freelancing as a graphic designer. By 22, I had launched my own small design agency. I didn't do it because I wanted to prove anything to my parents. I did it because I had to survive. Diana, on the other hand, never worked a day until she was 28. She went from Stanford to a master's program at Columbia, all funded by our parents. After graduation, she traveled through Southeast Asia for 18 months on their dime, finding herself. When she finally returned, our parents set her up in a luxury apartment in downtown Seattle and connected her with job opportunities through their network. 3 years ago, when Diana got engaged to Marcus, a successful tech entrepreneur she'd met at a networking event our father arranged, my parents went all out. The engagement party alone cost more than most people's weddings. Held at an exclusive country club with 200 guests, a live jazz band, and an open bar featuring top-shelf liquor. I was invited, of course. I was always invited. I was the dutiful younger sister who showed up, smiled for photos, and pretended everything was perfectly normal. I congratulated Diana genuinely because despite everything, I loved my sister. It wasn't her fault our parents played favorites. The wedding came 18 months later. It was a destination wedding in Tuscany, Italy. My parents paid for everything, and when I say everything, I mean everything. They spent $750,000 on that wedding. $750,000. The venue was a 15th-century villa. There were 90 guests flown in on their dime. The flowers were imported from 3 different countries. The wine was vintage bottles that cost more per bottle than my monthly rent. I attended with my boyfriend at the time, Nathan. We paid our own way, naturally. The flights, the hotel, the gifts, everything came out of our pockets. We couldn't afford to stay at the villa with the rest of the family, so we found a small bed and breakfast about 30 minutes away. During the wedding reception, my father gave a speech that I still remember word for word. He said, "Diana has always been our pride and joy, our shining star. Watching her grow into the remarkable woman she is today has been the greatest privilege of our lives. Marcus, you're not just gaining a wife. You're gaining a family that will support you both in every way possible. And to prove that, your mother and I have a special gift for you." That's when they announced they were giving Diana and Marcus $750,000 as a wedding gift. Not for the wedding itself. That was separate. This was for them to start their life together, to buy a house, invest in their future, whatever they wanted. The room erupted in applause. I clapped too, mechanically, while my heart sank into my stomach. Nathan squeezed my hand under the table. He knew. He'd watched my family dynamics play out over the 3 years we'd been together. He knew what this meant. Did I feel jealous? Honestly? Yes. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. But more than jealousy, I felt invisible. I felt like I didn't matter. Like all those years of being self-sufficient, of not being a burden, of making my own way in the world. None of it meant anything to them, but I pushed those feelings down. I told myself I was being petty. Diana deserved happiness. My parents had the means to give generously. It wasn't a competition. I was doing fine on my own. I had my business, which was actually thriving. I had Nathan, who loved me. I had a life I'd built from scratch, and I was proud of it. What I didn't know was that the worst was yet to come. 2 years after Diana's wedding, Nathan and I broke up. It wasn't dramatic or painful. We'd simply grown in different directions. He wanted to move to New York for a career opportunity. I was rooted in Portland, where my business was based. We parted as friends, which somehow made it both easier and harder. For about 8 months, I threw myself into work. My design agency had grown to 15 employees. We were landing major clients. I was making good money, not Diana and Marcus level, but comfortable. I bought my first house, a charming 1920s bungalow in a trendy neighborhood. I was genuinely happy being single and focusing on my career. Then I met Ryan at a mutual friend's barbecue. Ryan was different from anyone I'd dated before. He was a high school history teacher, genuinely passionate about education and making a difference in kids' lives. He wasn't wealthy, wasn't flashy, didn't come from money. He drove a 10-year-old Toyota, lived in a modest apartment, and spent his summers volunteering with education nonprofits. He was also kind, funny, thoughtful, and completely uninterested in impressing anyone. When I told him about my family dynamics during our 3rd date, he didn't judge or offer empty platitudes. He just said, "That sounds really hard, but you turned out pretty amazing anyway." I fell hard for Ryan. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. He moved into my bungalow after a year. We adopted 2 rescue dogs together. We talked about the future, kids, growing old together, all of it. He was my person. One evening in October, 2 years into our relationship, Ryan took me to the Japanese garden where we'd had our first real date. As the sun set over the maple trees blazing with autumn colors, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. The ring was simple but beautiful, a vintage setting he'd found at an antique shop with a small sapphire instead of a diamond because he knew I preferred colored stones. I said yes immediately. I couldn't imagine my life without him. We decided on a spring wedding, about 8 months away. We sat down and created a budget, $55,000. It seemed reasonable for what we wanted. A ceremony at a beautiful garden venue, a reception for 120 guests, good food, decent alcohol, a photographer we both loved, and a DJ instead of a band to save money. Ryan and I planned to split the costs. His parents, who were retired teachers living on fixed incomes, offered to contribute $5,000, which was incredibly generous of them. My parents hadn't said anything yet, so I assumed we'd be handling most of it ourselves. I was okay with that. I'd been handling things myself my whole life. Then, one Sunday dinner at my parents' house 3 months before the wedding, everything changed. Diana and Marcus were there with their 18-month-old daughter, Sophia. My parents were in full grandparent mode, doting on Sophia, taking a million photos, talking about setting up a college fund for her. It was sweet, actually. I was genuinely happy they were so involved with their granddaughter. After dinner, as we all sat in the living room with coffee, my mother suddenly turned to me and said, "Melissa, your father and I have been thinking. We never really gave you the same attention we gave Diana growing up." I froze. This was the first time either of them had ever acknowledged the disparity. My father nodded. "We've talked about it a lot, especially after Sophia was born. It made us reflect on how we raised you both. And we realized we weren't fair to you." I didn't know what to say. Ryan reached over and squeezed my hand. My mother continued, "So we want to make it right. We want to pay for your entire wedding. Whatever you want, whatever you've dreamed of, it's our gift to you." I felt tears spring to my eyes. For the first time in my life, I felt seen by them, acknowledged, like I mattered as much as Diana. "Are you serious?" I managed to say. "Completely serious," my father said. "We've already transferred the money into an account. Just tell us what you need, and we'll handle it." I looked at Ryan, who looked as shocked as I felt. Diana was smiling at me, genuinely happy. "Mom, Dad, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much." My mother stood up and hugged me. "You're our daughter. We should have done better by you all along." That night, driving home with Ryan, I couldn't stop crying. Happy tears this time. Ryan kept asking if I was okay, and I kept saying yes, I was more than okay. For the first time in my life, my parents had chosen me. They'd recognized me. They'd said out loud what I'd felt my whole life, that they hadn't been fair, and they were trying to make it right. Over the next 3 months, my mother got involved in the wedding planning in ways I'd never expected. She helped me choose flowers, went dress shopping with me, gave opinions on the menu. My father reviewed vendor contracts to make sure we weren't being overcharged. They both seemed genuinely excited and invested. We ended up spending $52,800 on the wedding, slightly under our original budget. The venue was perfect. A restored manor house with gardens overlooking the Willamette River. The food was incredible. The flowers were exactly what I'd dreamed of. Everything came together beautifully. My wedding day was perfect. I know everyone says that, but mine truly was. The weather cooperated, sunny and 75 degrees, with a light breeze that made the outdoor ceremony comfortable. The garden venue looked like something out of a fairy tale, with white chairs arranged in neat rows, an arch covered in climbing roses and wisteria, and the river sparkling in the background. I got ready in the bridal suite with my bridesmaids, 3 close friends from college, and Diana, who was my maid of honor. Despite our complicated family history, Diana had always been loving toward me. The inequality wasn't her fault, and she'd actually tried over the years to point out to our parents when things seemed unfair. As I put on my dress, a simple but elegant A-line gown in ivory silk with delicate beading, my mother came in. She had tears in her eyes. "You look absolutely beautiful, sweetheart," she said, adjusting my veil. "I'm so proud of you, of everything you've accomplished, everything you've built for yourself." "Thanks, Mom," I said, my own eyes welling up. She hugged me carefully, mindful of the dress and makeup. "I know we haven't always been the best parents to you, but I want you to know that we love you so much. Today is your day, and you deserve all of this happiness." Those words meant everything to me. They were the words I'd waited my whole life to hear. The ceremony was beautiful. Ryan cried when he saw me walking down the aisle. His vows made everyone tear up, including me. My father walked me down the aisle and actually choked up when he gave me away, which I'd never seen him do. Even at Diana's wedding, he'd been composed and proud. This felt different, more emotional, more real. The reception was everything we'd hoped for. The food was delicious. We'd chosen a menu of Northwest cuisine featuring local ingredients. The speeches were heartfelt. Ryan's best man told embarrassing but hilarious stories from their college days. Diana gave a speech about how proud she was of me, how I'd always been stronger than she was, how I'd built an amazing life through sheer determination. Then my father stood up to give his speech. "Melissa has always been our independent one," he began. "From the time she was young, she wanted to do things herself. She never asked for help, never complained, never made demands. She just quietly went about building her life, brick by brick." He paused, looking emotional. "As a father, I'm ashamed to say that I mistook that independence for not needing us. I thought because she didn't ask for help, she didn't want our involvement. But that wasn't true. She deserved our attention, our support, our investment, just as much as her sister did." I felt tears rolling down my face. Ryan held my hand tightly. "Today is our chance to show Melissa that we see her, we value her, and we're so incredibly proud of the woman she's become. Ryan, you're getting an extraordinary wife, someone who knows how to build something from nothing, who understands the value of hard work, who doesn't take anything for granted. Take care of her because she's precious to us." The room applauded. I stood up and hugged my father, crying into his shoulder. My mother joined us, and for a moment, we were just a family. Complicated and imperfect, but together. The rest of the evening was magical. Ryan and I had our first dance to La Vie en Rose by Louis Armstrong. We cut the cake, a 3-tier masterpiece decorated with fresh flowers. We danced with our parents, with our friends, with each other. Around 11 o'clock, as the party was winding down, my father pulled me aside one more time. "I just want you to know," he said quietly, "that paying for this wedding was the least we could do. You've never asked us for anything. You've made us so proud. I hope you know that." "I know, Dad," I said, hugging him. "Thank you for everything. For the wedding, for being here, for your speech. It means the world to me. You're our daughter," he said simply. "We love you." Ryan and I left around midnight in a vintage car decorated with "Just Married" signs and tin cans trailing behind. As we drove away, I looked back at the manor house, lit up against the night sky, and felt overwhelming gratitude. My parents had finally come through for me. They'd acknowledged the past and tried to make amends. Maybe we could have a better relationship going forward. We spent our wedding night at a luxury hotel downtown before flying out the next morning for our honeymoon in Greece. 2 weeks of island hopping that we'd saved up for over the past year. The honeymoon was incredible. We explored ancient ruins, swam in crystal clear water, ate amazing food, and spent hours just talking about our future. We wanted to wait a few years before having kids so I could get my business to a place where I could step back a bit. We talked about maybe moving to a bigger house eventually. We made plans and dreamed together. On our last day in Santorini, sitting on our hotel balcony watching the sunset over the caldera, Ryan said, "I'm so glad your parents came through for you. That speech your dad gave was really something." "I know," I said, leaning against him. "I feel like maybe things can be different now. Like maybe we can have a real relationship." "You deserve that," Ryan said, kissing the top of my head. I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Both my future with Ryan and my future relationship with my family. That hope lasted exactly 48 hours. We got back from our honeymoon on a Thursday evening, jet-lagged and happy, our apartment filled with postcards and souvenirs. We'd taken Friday off work to recover from the time change, so we spent the evening unpacking, doing laundry, and ordering Thai food for dinner. Saturday morning, I woke up around 9 and made coffee while Ryan was still sleeping. I sat at our kitchen table with my laptop, going through 2 weeks of emails that had piled up. There were client inquiries for my business, spam, newsletters I never read, the usual digital clutter. Then I saw an email from my father sent on Thursday evening, the day we'd arrived home. The subject line read, "Wedding expenses, important." Curious, I opened it. My father's emails were usually brief and to the point. This one was no exception, but what it said made my blood run cold. "Dear Melissa, please find attached a detailed breakdown of all expenses related to your wedding on May 15th. The total amount is $52,847.29. We request reimbursement within 30 days. Payment can be made via check or bank transfer. Please confirm receipt of this email and your plan for payment. Regards, Dad." Attached was a spreadsheet listing every single expense. Venue rental, $12,000. Catering, $15,600. Flowers, $4,200. Photography, $5,500. DJ, $2,000. On and on it went, down to the smallest details. Cocktail napkins, $87.50. Guest book, $45. Marriage license processing, $60. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was reading. This had to be a mistake. My parents had said they were paying for the wedding. They'd said it was a gift. They'd given that whole speech about making amends, about showing me they valued me. My hands started shaking. I read the email again, and again. Each time, the words stayed the same. Ryan walked into the kitchen, yawning. "Morning, beautiful. Is there coffee?" I couldn't speak. I just turned my laptop toward him. He read the email, his expression changing from confusion to disbelief to anger in about 30 seconds. "What the hell is this?" "I don't know," I whispered. They said it was a gift. At the wedding, your dad gave that whole speech about— Ryan ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I knew meant he was trying to control his temper. This can't be right. This has to be a mistake. It's not a mistake, I said, my voice breaking. Look at the detail. They documented everything. They planned this. Ryan came around the table and crouched beside me, putting his arms around me. Call them. There has to be an explanation. But I already knew there wasn't. Deep in my gut, I understood exactly what this was. This was my parents showing me who they really were. This was them demonstrating that even when they appeared to acknowledge me, to value me, there were always strings attached, always conditions, always a price. I called my mother first. She didn't answer. I tried my father, straight to voicemail. I sent a text to both of them. Received your email, very confused. Can we talk? No response. I tried Diana. She picked up on the third ring. Hey, how was Greece? I want to hear all about it. Diana, I said, my voice shaking. Did you know about this? Know about what? The invoice. Dad sent me an invoice for the entire wedding. He wants me to pay him back $52,000. There was silence on the other end. Then, what? That can't be right. It is right. I'm looking at it right now. A detailed spreadsheet of every expense with a request for payment within 30 days. Melissa, that doesn't make any sense. They said they were paying for it. It was their gift to you. Apparently not. Let me call Mom, Diana said. This has to be a misunderstanding. But it wasn't. An hour later, Diana called me back. She sounded shocked and upset. I talked to Mom, she said. She says they never intended it as a gift. They said they were covering the expenses, but that you were supposed to understand it was a loan. A loan? Diana, they never said anything about a loan. They said they wanted to pay for my wedding as a gift because they'd realized they hadn't been fair to me. I know, Diana said quietly. I was there. I heard what they said. I don't understand why they're doing this. Did they give you a loan for your wedding? I asked, though I already knew the answer. No, they gave us $750,000 as a gift. Melissa, I'm so sorry. This is wrong. After I hung up with Diana, I sat at my kitchen table for over an hour, just staring at nothing. Ryan made me more coffee. He held my hand. He didn't try to fix it or minimize it. He just stayed with me while I processed the betrayal. Because that's what it was. A betrayal. Maybe the biggest betrayal of my life. My parents had looked me in the eye, given speeches about how proud they were, about making amends, about valuing me. And all of it had been performative. All of it had been a lie. Or worse, maybe they actually did see it as different from Diana's wedding gift. Maybe in their minds, giving Diana $750,000 was natural and expected, while expecting me to repay $52,000 was also natural because I was the independent one who never needed anything. The rest of Saturday passed in a blur. I kept checking my phone, waiting for my parents to call and explain that the email had been sent by mistake, or that they'd reconsidered, or literally anything that would make this make sense. No call came. Ryan and I had a long conversation that evening. He was angrier than I'd ever seen him. We'll pay them back, he said. We'll liquidate some investments if we have to. But Melissa, you need to understand that this isn't about the money. This is about control and manipulation. I know, I said. I've always known, deep down. I thought maybe things had changed, that they'd finally seen me. They saw you at the wedding, Ryan said firmly. They saw how strong you are, how successful you've become without their help, how happy you are. And I think that scared them. So they're trying to bring you back under their control. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about everything. About my childhood spent in Diana's shadow. About working since I was 16. About putting myself through college. About building my business from nothing. About every moment I'd tried to earn my parents' approval and coming up short. And then I thought about the wedding. About my father's speech. About how I'd cried and believed him. About the hope I'd felt that maybe, finally, things would be different. By Sunday morning, I knew what I had to do. I called my bank and had them draft a cashier's check for $52,247.29. Then I sat down and wrote a letter. I wrote and rewrote it several times, making sure every word said exactly what I meant. The final version read, "Mom and Dad, I'm enclosing payment in full for the wedding expenses, as requested. I want to be clear that I can afford this payment. I've worked hard my entire adult life, built a successful business, and been financially responsible. The money itself is not the issue. What is the issue is what this invoice represents. When you offered to pay for my wedding, you knew exactly what you were doing. You knew I would interpret it as a gift, just as Diana's $750,000 was a gift. You knew I would see it as you finally acknowledging me, valuing me, trying to make amends for years of unequal treatment. If you intended this as a loan from the beginning, you should have said so up front. But you didn't because you wanted me to feel grateful, to feel like I finally mattered to you. And then, after my wedding day, after your speeches about being proud of me, you sent this invoice. You waited until I'd felt that moment of acceptance, of finally being enough in your eyes, before pulling the rug out from under me. I want you to know that I see this for what it is, an attempt to remind me that your love and approval come with conditions and strings, that no matter what I achieve, how independent I become, or how successful I am, I will always be the lesser child in your eyes. So I'm paying you back, every penny, and I'm also making a decision. From this day forward, I am removing myself from the cycle of seeking your approval. I am done trying to earn what you gave Diana freely. I am done being hurt by your favoritism and your manipulation. Consider this payment a closing of accounts. You don't owe me anything, and I don't owe you anything. We're even now, financially and emotionally. I don't hate you. I'm not even particularly angry anymore. I'm just done. I'm choosing my peace over your games. Take care of yourselves, Melissa." I read it to Ryan. He listened carefully and then said, "Are you sure this is what you want?" "Yes," I said. I've never been more sure of anything. On Monday morning, I mailed the check and letter via certified mail, requiring a signature. Then I blocked my parents' phone numbers, email addresses, and social media accounts. I didn't want to hear their justifications, their gaslighting, their attempts to rewrite history. For 48 hours, I felt lighter than I had in years. I'd said what I needed to say. I'd drawn a boundary. I'd chosen myself for once. And then the onslaught began. On Wednesday evening, 3 days after I'd mailed the check and letter, my phone started blowing up. Not from my parents. I'd blocked them. But from everyone else. First came my Aunt Rebecca, my mother's older sister. I'd always liked Aunt Rebecca. She'd been kind to me as a kid, remembered my birthday, asked about my interests. So when I saw her name on my phone, I answered. "Big mistake." "Melissa," she said, her voice cold. "I just got off the phone with your mother. She's devastated. How could you send such a cruel letter to your own parents?" "Aunt Rebecca, I don't think you have all the information." "Oh, I have all the information I need. Your parents generously paid for your entire wedding, and you repaid them by attacking them in writing. Your mother has been crying for 2 days. They sent me an invoice," I said, keeping my voice steady. "They demanded I pay them back for what they'd explicitly called a gift. That's not how your mother explained it. She said they'd always been clear it was a loan, and that you're twisting things now because you're embarrassed about having to pay it back." My hands clenched around my phone. Of course they were rewriting history. That's not true. They never mentioned a loan. They said it was a gift to make up for years of... Years of what? Years of giving you a good home, a good education, every advantage? Years of tolerating your resentment of your sister? "Melissa, I'm disappointed in you. You need to apologize to your parents." She hung up before I could respond. Over the next hour, I received similar calls and texts from my Uncle Tom, my cousin Jennifer, my mother's best friend Patricia, and 3 family friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Each message followed the same script. I was ungrateful, cruel, and selfish. My parents were devastated. I needed to apologize. None of them wanted to hear my side. None of them questioned why my parents had sent an invoice in the first place. They'd been given a narrative, poor parents victimized by their ungrateful daughter, and they'd accepted it without question. Ryan came home from work to find me sitting on our couch, staring at my phone as message after message came through. "What's happening?" he asked. I showed him the texts. His expression darkened. Block all of them. Ryan, these are my family members, people I've known my whole life. And they're harassing you without knowing the full story because your parents manipulated them. Block them. He was right, but it hurt. These were people who'd been at my wedding 2 weeks ago, smiling and congratulating me. Now they were attacking me based on whatever version of events my parents had fed them. The worst came Thursday afternoon. Diana called. This time she wasn't sympathetic. Melissa, what the hell did you say to Mom and Dad? They're a mess. Mom hasn't stopped crying. Dad is talking about having a heart attack from the stress. Did you read my letter? I asked. No, but they told me what was in it. How could you be so vindictive, so cruel? Diana, they sent me an invoice for my wedding after calling it a gift. After that whole speech Dad gave about making amends. They said it was always meant to be a loan, that you misunderstood. That's a lie and you know it. You were there when they offered. You heard what they said. There was a long pause. Then Diana said quietly, Maybe you heard what you wanted to hear. Those words cut deeper than anything else. My own sister, who'd witnessed the same favoritism I had, was choosing their side. She was rewriting history to align with their narrative. Diana, I said, my voice breaking, you stood up at my wedding and gave a speech about how I was stronger than you, how I'd built my life with determination. Did you mean any of that? Of course I did. But that doesn't mean you get to attack our parents for trying to help you. They didn't help me, Diana. They humiliated me. They manipulated me, and now they're lying about it. I think you need professional help, Melissa. I really do. You're delusional about how our parents treated us growing up. They loved us both. They still do. You're just so focused on this victim narrative that you can't see it. I hung up. I couldn't listen anymore. That evening, Ryan and I had a long conversation about going no contact with my entire family. It seemed extreme, but the constant messages were affecting my mental health. I couldn't work, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything else. Do what you need to do, Ryan said. I support you either way. But you don't owe these people anything. Not an explanation, not an apology, nothing. Over the weekend, I blocked 17 more people on my phone and social media. The attacks didn't stop. They just shifted to email and messages on platforms I hadn't thought to block. People I barely knew were sending me paragraphs about how disappointed they were in me. Through it all, the people who stood by me were Ryan, his parents, and my close friends who knew the full story. Ryan's mother even called me and said, Honey, you did the right thing. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary for your well-being. By Monday, exactly 1 week after I'd mailed the check and letter, something shifted. The messages slowed down. Either my family had run out of people to recruit to their cause, or enough time had passed that the initial outrage had faded. But the damage was done. I'd lost my entire extended family in a single week. And the worst part? I wasn't even surprised. On some level, I think I'd always known that my family's love was conditional. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. 2 weeks after the barrage of family messages began, I received an unexpected call from my father's younger brother, Uncle Derek. Derek had always been the black sheep of the family. He'd moved to California in his 20s, started a business, and generally kept his distance from family drama. We'd seen him maybe 5 times in my entire life, usually at major holidays or events. I almost didn't answer, assuming he was calling to pile on with everyone else. But curiosity got the better of me. Melissa, it's Uncle Derek. Do you have a few minutes to talk? If this is about my parents, I don't really want to... It's not. Well, it is, but not in the way you think. I've been hearing about what happened, and I wanted to tell you something. Something I probably should have told you years ago. I sat down. Okay. Your father and I had a very similar situation when we were younger. Different circumstances, but the same dynamic. Our parents, your grandparents, they played favorites too. Your dad was the golden child. I was the screw-up, the disappointment. I'd never heard this before. My grandparents on my father's side had died when I was young, and no one ever talked much about the family dynamics from that generation. Derek continued, When I was 25, I started a business. It failed within a year. I was devastated, broke, and desperate. I asked our parents for a loan. Not a gift, explicitly a loan, for $15,000 to get back on my feet. They said no. Said I needed to learn responsibility, that they weren't going to enable my bad decisions. I'm sorry, I said. Wait, it gets better. 2 months later, your father got married to your mother. Our parents gave him $100,000 as a wedding gift. Just handed it over, no strings attached. When I confronted them about the double standard, they said your father had always been responsible and deserved their support. I hadn't earned it. My stomach dropped. The pattern went back even further than I'd realized. I cut contact with them after that, Derek said. Moved to California, built my own life, and didn't look back. Your father stayed close with them, took their side. We didn't speak for 15 years, until they both passed away. Why are you telling me this now? Because I see your father doing the exact same thing to you that our parents did to me. The favoritism, the conditional love, the mind games. And I wanted you to know that you're not crazy. You're not overreacting. This is a pattern that goes back generations in your family. I felt tears streaming down my face. Does my dad know he's doing this? Does he see the parallel? I think on some level he does, Derek said. But admitting it would mean acknowledging that he enabled our parents' abuse toward me. It would mean accepting that he's become just like them. That's a hard thing to face. We talked for almost an hour. Derek told me more stories about his childhood, about being treated as less than, about watching our grandparents pour everything into my father while leaving him with scraps. It was eerily similar to my own experience with Diana. The thing is, Derek said as we were wrapping up, leaving was the best thing I ever did. I built a successful business, married an amazing woman, have 2 great kids. I did it all without them, and I'm better for it. You will be too. Thank you, I said, for calling, for sharing this. It helps to know I'm not alone in this. You're not alone, he assured me. And Melissa? You don't owe them anything. Not your time, not your energy, not your peace of mind. Protect yourself. After we hung up, I told Ryan everything. He listened quietly, then said, So it's generational trauma. Your dad is perpetuating what was done to him. Apparently. Does that change anything for you? I thought about it. No. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't mean you have to keep letting them do it. My father had a choice. He could have learned from what happened with Uncle Derek. He could have done better. Instead, he chose to repeat the pattern. Ryan pulled me into a hug. I'm proud of you, for standing up for yourself, for setting boundaries, for not backing down even when everyone turned against you. I feel like I lost my whole family in the span of 2 weeks. You didn't lose anything that was real, Ryan said gently. Real love doesn't come with conditions. Real family doesn't manipulate you and then turn everyone against you when you call them out. He was right, but it still hurt. I'd spent 30 years trying to earn my parents' love, trying to be good enough, trying to matter. And in the end, none of it had made any difference. A month after the wedding invoice incident, I was finally starting to feel like myself again. My business was thriving. We'd landed 2 major new clients. Ryan and I had settled into married life beautifully. We were talking about finally taking that trip to Japan we'd been planning. Life was moving forward. Then, on a random Tuesday evening, I received an email from my father. It came from a new email address I hadn't blocked, with the subject line, From Dad, please read. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Ryan was working late, so I was alone in our living room with a glass of wine, and our 2 dogs sprawled on the couch beside me. Finally, I clicked it open. Melissa, I'm writing from a new email because I know you've blocked my other accounts. I'm asking you to please read this with an open mind. Your mother and I have done a lot of thinking over the past month. We've also had several conversations with Deanna, who helped us understand how our actions must have appeared from your perspective. We want to explain the invoice. When we offered to pay for your wedding, we genuinely meant it as a gift. We were proud of you and wanted to show you that we valued you as much as Diana. However, after the wedding, your mother and I had a disagreement about finances, unrelated to your wedding, that got heated. In the heat of that argument, I made a rash decision to send you that invoice. It wasn't planned. It wasn't intentional. I was angry about something else entirely, and I took it out on you in the worst possible way. I know this doesn't excuse what I did. I know it doesn't undo the hurt. But I want you to know it wasn't a calculated manipulation. It was a terrible mistake made in anger, and I regret it more than you can possibly know. Your mother is devastated by this situation, so am I. We never wanted to lose you. We love you, Melissa. We're proud of you. I know we haven't always shown it in the right ways, but it's true. If you're willing, I'd like to meet with you in person. Just you and me. I want to try to make this right. I know I can't undo what's been done, but I want to try to explain, to apologize properly, to see if there's any way we can move forward. I'm not asking you to forgive me or even to trust me. I'm just asking for a chance to talk. One conversation. If after that you still want nothing to do with us, I'll respect that. Please think about it. Love, Dad. I read it 3 times. The tone was different from anything my father had ever written to me before. More vulnerable, more honest. But I also couldn't ignore the fact that it was full of justifications. The invoice was sent in the heat of anger about something else. It was rash, not planned. It was a terrible mistake, all of which might be true. But it didn't change the fundamental issue. My parents had treated Diana and me differently our entire lives. The invoice wasn't the cause of our broken relationship. It was the final symptom. When Ryan got home, I showed him the email. "What do you think?" I asked. He read it carefully. "I think your dad is trying. I don't know if he's taking full responsibility, but he's at least acknowledging he hurt you. The question is, what do you want?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to believe him, but another part of me thinks this is just another manipulation. Meet with him, let him explain, get drawn back into the drama. What does your gut tell you?" I sat with that question. My gut told me that my father was scared. Scared of losing me permanently. Scared of being seen as the bad guy. Scared of facing the fact that he'd become his own parents. "I think," I said slowly, "that maybe I should meet with him. Not because I think it will fix everything, but because I need closure. I need to look him in the eye and tell him how this has affected me. And I need to hear what he has to say, even if it doesn't change anything." "Okay," Ryan said. "But you're going alone?" "No, I want you there. In the coffee shop or restaurant or wherever we meet, at a different table. I need to know you're there." "Always," he said. I waited 2 days before responding to my father's email. I wanted to be sure about my decision. Finally, I wrote back, "Dad, I'll meet with you, once. But I have conditions. First, this is not me agreeing to reconcile or even to continue a relationship afterward. This is one conversation, and after it, I'll decide what I want going forward. Second, I want you to be honest. Not partially honest. Not explanations that avoid the real issues. Complete honesty about why you've treated Diana and me differently. About what the invoice really meant. About everything. Third, I'm bringing Ryan. He'll be nearby, but not at our table. I need him there for support. If you can agree to these terms, I'm willing to meet next Saturday at 2 p.m. at Brood Awakening Coffee Shop in downtown Portland. Let me know." "Melissa," he responded within an hour. "Agreed. I'll see you Saturday." Saturday came faster than I expected. I spent the morning anxious, changing clothes 3 times, barely eating breakfast. Ryan kept asking if I was okay, and I kept saying yes, even though I wasn't. We arrived at Brood Awakening 15 minutes early. It was a neutral location, a coffee shop I'd been to a few times, but didn't have strong associations with. Ryan got us both coffee and found a table in the back corner, where he could see me, but not be obvious. At exactly 2 p.m., my father walked in. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. He'd lost weight, and there were new lines around his eyes. He spotted me and walked over, hesitating before sitting down. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You said you wanted to talk, so talk." He took a breath. "I don't know where to start. Start with Diana. Start with why you've always treated her differently than me." My father looked down at his hands. "Your mother and I never meant to play favorites. We didn't see it that way. But you did play favorites. Diana got everything handed to her. I got to watch from the sidelines. Diana needed more support," he said. "She's always been more fragile than you, more dependent. You were always so capable, so independent. We thought we were raising you to be strong. You were neglecting me, I said flatly. There's a difference. He flinched. I can see that now. At the time, we thought we were doing the right thing. Diana needed more help, more guidance. You seemed like you had everything figured out. I was a child. I needed parents too. I needed to feel like I mattered. You did matter, you do matter. Then why the invoice? And don't tell me it was just because you were angry about something else. That's not the whole truth. My father was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. My brother called me, Derek. He told me he'd talk to you. He did. He told me I was doing to you what our parents did to him. And he was right. My father's eyes were red. I watched my parents favor me over Derek our entire childhood. I knew it was wrong. I told myself I'd never do that to my own children. But I did it anyway. Why? Because it's what I knew. Because Diana reminded me of myself, and you reminded me of Derek. Because somewhere along the way, I started believing that providing financial support to Diana was the same as showing her love, and that your independence meant you didn't need love. I felt tears welling up, but pushed them back. The invoice? After your wedding, I felt guilty. I'd given this big speech about being proud of you, about making amends, and I meant every word. But then I realized that I'd just spent $52,000 on your wedding when I'd given Diana $750,000. And instead of seeing that disparity as wrong, I tried to rationalize it. I told myself that Diana needed that money more, that you were successful on your own, that it was fair somehow. So you sent the invoice. I sent the invoice because I wanted to tell myself that the situations were equivalent, that I'd spent the same amount on both daughters' weddings. But that was a lie I was telling myself. The truth is, I wanted to take back the gesture because it forced me to confront how unequal I'd been. This was more honesty than I'd expected. Do you understand how that made me feel? Like we'd offered you acceptance and then snatched it away. Like we'd proven that your worth was conditional. Like no matter what you achieved, you'd never be as valued as your sister. He looked up at me. Derek explained it to me. Because that's exactly how he felt. We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, the coffee shop hummed with normal activity. People working on laptops, friends chatting, baristas calling out orders. What do you want from this conversation? I finally asked. I want to apologize. Properly. Not with justifications or explanations. Just an apology. He took a breath. Melissa, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every time I prioritized Diana over you. I'm sorry for not seeing you, for not valuing you, for making you feel like you had to earn love that should have been freely given. I'm sorry for the invoice, for the manipulation, for everything. You deserved better. You deserved parents who celebrated your independence instead of taking it as permission to neglect you. I felt something crack inside me. This was what I'd wanted to hear my entire life. But hearing it now, after everything, it felt both too late and exactly right. I can't go back to how things were, I said. I can't pretend the past 30 years didn't happen. I know. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking if there's any possibility of moving forward differently, of me being a better father going forward, even if I can't fix what's already been done. I don't know, I said honestly. I need time, a lot of time, and I need to see actions, not just words. That's fair. And I need you to understand that Diana and I are different people with different needs, but we both deserved equal treatment. Your job as a parent wasn't to give Diana more because she needed it. Your job was to give us both what we needed. You're right. I'm going to stay no contact for a while longer. Maybe a few months, maybe longer. When and if I'm ready to try rebuilding something, I'll reach out. But it has to be on my terms. My father nodded. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Before you go, I want to give you this. I took it hesitantly. Inside was the check I'd sent them. 52,947.29, uncashed, along with a note. The note read, "This was always meant to be a gift. We should never have asked for it back. Please keep this money and use it for your future. With love and deep regret, Mom and Dad." I stared at the check. I don't want this. I know, but please take it anyway. not as an attempt to buy your forgiveness, but as me keeping my original promise. The promise I should never have broken. I folded the envelope and put it in my purse, not because I planned to keep the money, but because refusing it in that moment felt like more drama than I had energy for. I should go, I said, standing up. My father stood too. Melissa? Yes? Your Uncle Derek said something to me. He said that leaving our family was the best thing he ever did, that he's happier without us. I hope that's not true for you. I hope someday we can be part of your happiness instead of a source of pain. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and walked away. Ryan met me at the door, and we left together. In the 3 months following my meeting with my father, a lot changed. First, I did deposit that check, but not for myself. Ryan and I used it to set up a scholarship fund for students from underprivileged backgrounds who wanted to study graphic design. It seemed fitting, taking money that represented conditional love and transforming it into unconditional support for young people trying to build their futures. Second, my business continued to grow. We hired 5 more employees, moved into a larger office space, and doubled our client base. It turned out that the mental energy I'd been spending on managing my family dynamics was now available for my actual life, and I was more focused and creative than ever. Third, Ryan and I decided to start trying for a baby. It felt like the right time. We were stable, happy, and building the kind of family we wanted. The kind where children would be valued equally, where love wouldn't come with conditions, where independence would be celebrated rather than used as an excuse for neglect. Fourth, Uncle Derek became a regular presence in my life. We talked on the phone every few weeks, and he and his wife flew up to Portland to have dinner with Ryan and me. It was strange having a family connection that felt healthy and supportive, but also wonderful. Derek understood what I'd been through in a way no one else could. As for my parents, Diana, and the rest of my family, radio silence. I'd heard through Derek that Diana had given birth to her second child, a son, that my parents had retired and sold their house, downsizing to a condo, that life was continuing for all of them without me in it. Some days that hurt, some days it felt like relief. Most days it felt like both at the same time. Then, in early December, about 6 months after the wedding invoice incident, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I normally wouldn't have answered, but something made me pick up. Melissa, it's Diana. My stomach dropped. How did you get this number? Derek gave it to me. Don't be mad at him, I begged. Melissa, I need to talk to you. Please, just 5 minutes. I should have hung up. That would have been the healthy boundary. But curiosity won. 5 minutes. I've been going to therapy, Diana said, since the whole wedding thing. I needed to understand why I reacted the way I did, why I sided with Mom and Dad so automatically. Okay. My therapist helped me see that I've been complicit in the favoritism, that by accepting all of their support and gifts without questioning the disparity, I was part of the problem, and that when you finally stood up for yourself, I defended them because their narrative was easier than facing my own guilt. I didn't say anything. You were right, Melissa. About everything. The way they treated us wasn't okay. It was never okay. And I knew it wasn't okay, but I benefited from it, so I convinced myself it was fine. Why are you telling me this? Because I want to apologize, because you're my sister and I miss you, because I want to do better. Diana, I said carefully, I appreciate the apology, I really do. But I need you to understand that this isn't something that can be fixed with one phone call. I know. I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness. I'm just asking if maybe, someday, we could try to rebuild our relationship. Sister to sister, not daughter and daughter. Maybe, I said, but it would have to be separate from Mom and Dad. I'm not ready to deal with them, and I need to know that you can maintain a relationship with me that isn't dependent on your relationship with them. I can do that. I want to do that. We talked for 20 more minutes. Diana told me about her therapy insights, about how she was trying to be more aware of privilege, about how she wanted her own children to be raised differently than we were. I listened, cautiously hopeful, but not quite ready to trust. Can I ask you something? I said before we hung up. Of course. When Mom and Dad gave you and Marcus $750,000 for your wedding, did you ever feel like it was too much? Like maybe they should have saved some of that to treat me equally? There was a long pause. Honestly, no. At the time, I just felt grateful and lucky. I didn't think about what it meant for you. I'm ashamed of that now. At least you're honest. I'm trying to be, about everything. After we hung up, I told Ryan about the conversation. How do you feel? He asked. Confused, hopeful, scared, all of it. Do you want to try rebuilding with Diana? I think so, but slowly, very slowly. That's fair. She spent 30+ years being on the other side of this dynamic. It's going to take time for her to unlearn those patterns. Over the following months, Diana and I texted occasionally. Nothing deep, just checking in, sharing photos, small connections. She sent me pictures of her new baby. I sent her pictures of our dogs. We were feeling our way towards something new, something that didn't rely on our parents as mediators. Meanwhile, I maintained no contact with my parents. They tried reaching out a few times through Derek, but I wasn't ready. I might never be ready. And I was learning to be okay with that. It's been a little over a year since my wedding, and my life looks completely different than I imagined it would. Ryan and I are expecting our first child in 3 months, a daughter. We've already decided that she'll know Uncle Derek and his family, and maybe someday Diana and her kids. But my parents will not be part of her life unless something drastically changes. My business is more successful than ever. We just signed our biggest client yet, and I'm in talks about maybe writing a book about building a creative business from the ground up. Diana and I have coffee once a month now. It's still sometimes awkward, still complicated by years of unequal treatment and different perspectives. But we're trying. She's still in therapy, still working through her own issues around privilege and guilt. I respect that work, even when it's hard. As for my parents, I finally agreed to one more meeting with them last month. It was Diana who convinced me. She said they'd been doing their own therapy work, that they were genuinely trying to understand what they'd done wrong. The meeting was at the same coffee shop where I'd met with my father before. This time, both my parents came. My mother spoke first. Melissa, I've spent the past year in therapy trying to understand my own behavior. My therapist helped me see that I projected my own anxiety onto Diana, seeing her as fragile and in need of constant support. And I projected my own mother's independence onto you, assuming you didn't need me. My father added, "We're not asking for forgiveness. We're not asking for a relationship. We just wanted you to know that we see what we did. We understand it was wrong, and we're sorry." "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing," my mother said. "We just wanted you to hear that we know we failed you, that you deserved better, that your independence wasn't a sign you didn't need parents. It was a survival strategy you developed because we weren't there for you the way we should have been." It was the most direct acknowledgement they'd ever given. No justifications, no explanations, just ownership. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said. "Maybe someday, but not yet." "We understand," my father said. "We're not going to push. We're just here if and when you ever want to try." We left it at that. No dramatic reconciliation, no promises, just an acknowledgement and a door left slightly open. A few weeks later, as I was setting up the nursery for our daughter, Ryan asked me if I'd thought about what I wanted to tell her about her grandparents. I said, "I'll tell her the truth. That sometimes families are complicated, that people can love you and still hurt you, that setting boundaries is necessary and healthy, and that she is loved unconditionally, always, no matter what." "She's lucky to have you as a mom," Ryan said. "We're both lucky to have each other." Looking back on everything that happened, I don't regret sending that letter or setting those boundaries. The past year has been painful, full of grief for the family relationships I'll never have, and mourning for the childhood I deserved but didn't get. But it's also been liberating. I learned that I don't need my parents' approval to be worthy. I don't need to earn love. Real love is given freely. I don't need to accept mistreatment in the name of family harmony. Most importantly, I learned that choosing yourself, your peace, your mental health, your boundaries, isn't selfish. It's necessary. The wedding invoice was supposed to remind me of my place in my family's hierarchy. Instead, it freed me from that hierarchy entirely. It showed me who I could be without the weight of their conditional love. And honestly, I'm doing pretty damn well. To anyone else dealing with family favoritism, manipulation, or conditional love. You deserve better. You don't have to accept crumbs of affection while watching others feast. You don't have to be grateful for the bare minimum. You don't have to stay in relationships that diminish you. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is walk away. And sometimes the family you choose, the one you build with your partner, your friends, your children, becomes more real and loving than the one you were born into. I'm still figuring out what my relationship with my family will look like going forward. Maybe Diana and I will become close. Maybe my parents will continue to do the work and we'll rebuild something new. Or maybe the distance will remain, and I'll build my life around the people who value me consistently and unconditionally. Either way, I'm okay. More than okay, I'm free. And that invoice, that piece of paper that was supposed to put me in my place, I framed it. It hangs in my office now, a reminder of the moment I chose myself. The moment I decided I was worth more than conditional love and manipulative games. Some people might think that's bitter or vindictive. I think it's a celebration of boundaries, of self-worth, of breaking generational patterns, of refusing to pass trauma down to the next generation. When my daughter is born in 3 months, she'll grow up in a home where love is freely given, where she never has to wonder if she matters as much as someone else, where her independence is celebrated without being used as an excuse to neglect her. She'll grow up knowing she is enough, exactly as she is, and maybe that's the greatest revenge. Not against my parents, but against the cycle itself. Breaking the pattern, building something better, choosing love without conditions. That's my story. That's how a $52,000 invoice became my declaration of independence. And I wouldn't change a thing.